Russell Brand spoke out publicly Friday, the first time since being accused of rape and other forms of sexual misconduct. Let's take a look.
Obviously, it's been an extraordinary and distressing week, and I thank you very much for your support. I also don't imagine you've heard of the Trusted News Initiative. Now, as is often the case when a word like trusted is used as part of an acronym to describe an unelected body, trust is the last thing you should be offering. The Trusted News Initiative is a collaboration between big tech and legacy media organisations to target, control, choke and shut down independent media organisations, like this one.
He didn't specifically address the claims, which he's denied, but instead talked about the British government's effort to censor him, which he said he will be talking about on his show today on Stay Free on Rumble.
According to reports, various companies like Burger King, ASOS, HelloFresh, to name a few, pulled their advertisements from the video platform Rumble, where the comedian hosts his program, and which did not comply with the UK's request to cut ties with him. Brand has vehemently denied the onslaught of allegations, of which he has not yet been formally charged or found guilty.
And that's an important point for a lot of people.
It
that
is.
Even if they
the presumption
believe
of
that,
innocence.
Yeah, that there is credibility to some of these accounts, that there's corroborating evidence for many of these accounts, that he could have done a lot of bad things, that prematurely having these kind of being targeted in these ways financially prior to there being any investigation of a criminal or informal type, and especially when so many of the allegations are anonymous, seems preemptive. And it seems like it's geared towards something other than justice for the victims. It seems to be about punishing him and his platform and his ability to reach people talking about issues other than anything having to do with the sexual assault.
But look, this is what happens when you have a society where everyone just immediately reacts, and these knee-jerk reactions without having all of the facts, all of the evidence. And from the company's perspectives, I don't necessarily blame them. I don't agree. But at the end of the day, they have to look at their bottom line. And HelloFresh or Burger King or ASOS, they don't want their consumers striking, saying, you know what, we're no longer going to purchase burgers from Burger King, or we're no longer going to order our deliveries from HelloFresh. So they're trying to be on the side of the public. But I think it's just really dangerous. As I stated a week ago, Bree, you have to be careful without making judgment without all of the evidence. And we have no clue if months from now, if some of these folks may retract their statements. We don't know the credibility of the individuals that are making these allegations. I mean, do they have drug issues, criminal? I mean, all of those things have to be, I'm not saying they do, but those things have to be raised, and I think fairly so.
Well, I don't know that that would materially affect the perception of this.
You would raise it in a court of law. Of course you would, in terms of credibility.
Especially since Russell Brand himself has had many issues with addiction. And I think he's talked about how some of his behavior, his misogynistic behavior in the past, was mixed up in his lack of control.
But misogynistic behavior doesn't necessarily go as far as breaking the law.
Right, and that's the argument that he's made. But he's very much copped to, I don't think there's a dispute about the fact that he had the relationship with the 16-year-old, for instance. It is legal in the UK. The question is whether or not that behavior is perceived to be immoral enough for there to be repercussions of it on financially. So I want to get back to the point that you made earlier. I tend to agree that advertisers have the right to do what they want to do to protect what they think their brand interests are. If Burger King or HelloFresh or whomever feels like it's appropriate to no longer run ads on his programming, that's fine. I do think that they're doing something different, though. They're not saying, I don't want you to run ads on Russell Brand's show. They're saying, we don't want to run ads on Rumble, period. And that feels like an effort to punish Rumble for being a platform that's unwilling to kick off Russell Brand or to demonetize Russell Brand, which takes us to this other piece, which is the demonetization. What this starts to feel like, when you read, go back to the letter, remember last week we talked about, there was this letter from the House of Commons in London, their Culture, Media and Sports Committee. And what they specifically said was, this is a quote from their September 19th letter, while we recognize that TikTok is not the creator of the content published by Mr. Brand, and his content may be within the community guidelines set out by the platform, we are concerned that he may be able to profit from his content on the platform.
As I stated, it's about his finances. They want to destroy this guy economically.
So they're recognizing that there's no violation of the standards that these companies actually have for the content on the platform. They're explicitly saying, we just don't like who you are off the platform.
Pretty much.
And we feel like we should be able to control whether or not you're able to earn an income as a consequence of that. And this does then start to feel like a kind of like a labor rights issue. Do we want to be in a place where a government can try to coerce a company into firing an employee not because they violated any of the policies of the company, but because there have been accusations, many of them or all of them anonymous, that have not been vetted in a court of law?
They haven't been proven. They have not been proven. They have not withstood cross-examination from Russell Brand's potential defense attorneys if it were to go before a judge and a jury. I think this is dangerous territory. And while there are some people who are going to applaud these efforts of the UK government, and some would want to see the same thing in the United States under the guise of protecting victims or protecting society from individuals like Russell Brand, my rebut to those individuals will simply be this. What happens when the day comes when someone believes your language goes too far or your behavior goes too far? Then they say, well, you know what? We should utilize through compulsory force the entire force and pressures of the government on a private company or publicly traded company to censor you. So then you have to start asking the question, when you start breaking down the layers here, where is the line? Or is there not a line? It's just the line just doesn't exist depending on who's sort of pulling the strings of government at that particular time and their views on a host of social issues or political issues or economic issues. I mean, I think we're in very dangerous territory here, Bree. And while those who may be opposed to Russell Brand may be applauding this, I would just issue a warning to them and say your day may sometime be soon.
Yeah, I mean, the one distinction that I would make between my own view and some of the people who are defending Brand is that I think that sometimes the presumption of innocence kind of legal language gets overextended to individuals. I think individuals are well within their right to come to some conclusions and decide to not want to support Rumble or not want to support or watch Russell Brand. When I hear Megyn Kelly, and I think Candace Owens also speaking passionately about how distasteful, how disgusted they are by the notion that he was in a relationship with a teenager, with a 16-year-old when he was in his 30s. I don't think that we need a court of law to vet that that was true. That happened. It's not illegal.
Sure, I don't like it either, but that doesn't mean that the guy should be censored from Rumble.
Wait a minute. So I just want to be really clear that I do think that sometimes people weaponize presumption of innocence language to try to silence legitimate opinions that are held by people who have come to a conclusion that they find personally his actions to be reprehensible. And I really want to respect that and say that that is real and fine. And that is not the same thing as censorship. What I have a much bigger problem with is the actual coercion with Rumble as a media enterprise from the state in particular. Because I also think even though it's frustrating, I'm sure, Elon Musk has dealt with this with advertiser withdrawal. At the end of the day, when you have an advertiser-supported business, you are always subject to the capriciousness of the public,
you're at the
behest
of the whims of public emotions, which flow like the wind. You don't know if they're going to be left or right tomorrow.
That is what it is.
People feel, and I agree.
You're courting the mainstream.
No, you really are, and I agree that people are entitled to their opinions. But you know what they say about opinions, and I can't use that language on the show. But opinions shouldn't dictate whether or not a government is going to privately, or in the case which we know that has occurred within our own country, or in the case of the UK, privately or publicly try to coerce a company to behave in a manner that the government believes is proper or in the interest of the public. The public, I believe, maintains a right to not download Rumble. They can download X or whatever other social media sites up there. I mean, I think the marketplace will dictate whether or not Rumble will be successful in the months and years to come. The government doesn't need to intervene in order for that to take place.
No. I think that that's right, but the reality is also that Twitter has lost 50% of its market share as a consequence. And Elon Musk is talking about suing the ADL, who he attributes the bad press to, which there's some questions there about whether that is really free speech. But at the end of the day, that still might not bode well for these companies. It still could be that Twitter goes down or Rumble goes down because of public opinion, and that is just the market speaking.
See, the issue here, Bree, is the courts cannot force a company to run ads on a platform.
Right. No, I agree. So
that's what's difficult about this, and this is the point that I was making last week. These folks just do not care about the financial implications of their behavior. And in the case of Russell,
these folks?
folks, meaning those who are against Russell Brand, who are applauding this, the government bureaucrats.
But that's not their job to care about the financial implications of their behavior.
But no, I disagree with that. I think we all have a responsibility to check our opinions at the door. Again, I may dislike something, but I'm not going to allow my dislike of an individual or an individual's behavior to impact a business structure.
See, I disagree. I think that boycotting is effective. I think that the boycott and divestment movement in South Africa played a role in ending apartheid.
When there's a net gain to the overall society, Bree, what is the net gain to the overall society by boycotting Rumble?
That's subjective, Shermichael.
Is it, though?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's subjective. People like Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens and thousands of women and people across America who find Russell Brand, you can't get away from the fact that most people
watch him.
Well, that's what they're doing. They're not watching him, and advertisers are withdrawing because they don't want to be tarnished by Russell Brand's image, one way or the other, rightly or wrong, whether it's proven or not.
And that's the problem, though, the proof. That's my problem.
But it's not HelloFresh's job to make sure that Rumble is financially viable. It's not Megyn Kelly's job to make sure that they're rising and falling on market and opinion. That's what I'm saying about advertiser-based businesses. It is what it is. It's a tough business to get into, and that's why the Rumble business model. It's curious to see. I'm curious to see whether or not it will sustain itself, because their whole raison d'être is to be independent, not to bend to the will of these of the government and other kind of social pressures. The statement that they put out in response to the letter that I read a few minutes ago was very strong. They said, while Rumble obviously deplores sexual assault, rape, and all serious crimes and believes that both alleged victims and the accused are entitled to a full and serious investigation, it is vital to note that recent allegations against Russell Brand have nothing to do with content on Rumble's platform. And they go on to say that they will not be deplatforming or demonetizing him in any way. But can you sustain yourself in an advertiser-based model? I mean, but
most companies depend on public image, whether it's Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whether it's Xbox, PlayStation.
What I'm getting to is I think what they're going to have to do is what Elon Musk has realized, is that if you're going to be a I don't care about public opinion kind of a platform, you need subscribers to weather the storm. You're going to have a subscriber base of people who are going to be able to pay you money.
Model, though. That's not a sustainable
model.
model.
For many content creators like myself, I am so grateful for a platform like Patreon, where I have a subscriber base that pays me $5 a month to do a podcast. So I don't have to worry about whether or not my video does well on YouTube or whether YouTube demonetizes me, because people who actually care about me and respect me and my content are going to be able to pay me no matter what.
I understand that point, Bree, but I think it's just very dangerous, in my opinion, for companies to change and pivot every single time public opinion changes.
I agree, but this is the situation Rumble's in.
And for us not to say that the general public at some level has a responsibility, I disagree with that.
So now we're going to police the private opinions. Megyn Kelly, the mother of a 13-year-old girl or 12-year-old girl?
Bree, I'm not saying police, but what I am saying is to tell people to check your opinions in terms of the overall financial impact that could have on a private company.
So what does that mean for someone like Megyn Kelly? She's not allowed on her show to express her opinion that it's unconscionable for a 30-year-old man to be with a 16-year-old girl?
Of course she can, but expressing your opinion that you disagree with Russell Brand dating a 16-year-old and then saying, but you should also remove Russell Brand, those are two different things.
But she's not saying that.
So I'm saying you can have your opinion while also not calling for a platform to deplatform someone.
But this is the point I'm making. She's not calling for deplatforming
She isn't,
of Russia.
but a lot of people are.
But here's the thing.
The UK government, they are.
But wait a minute. And I disagree with what the UK government says. But Megyn Kelly and many others who are simply saying in the first part that his behavior is deplorable to them has the effect on advertisers who are also not the ones who have letters being written to them in this instance. Advertisers are acting on public sentiment, finding his actions distasteful.
And that's
going to happen regardless.
You can say, I dislike the behavior, but I don't think the guy should be deplatformed because I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in justice.
But HelloFresh isn't deplatforming. HelloFresh is deciding that they don't want HelloFresh associated with Russell Brand.
But they're removing their ad dollars from the overall platform.
Because it's stigmatizing.
That's a problem.
They don't want to be negatively stigmatized by association with someone who is considered to be
He's one
distasteful.
person on an app with probably thousands of people.
Right, so I think it's an interesting decision, for example, to pull your ads from Rumble. This is what I said earlier. To pull your ads from Rumble as as a whole, instead of just saying, I don't want my ads to run along Russell Brand.
Which they could easily do.
And people can then do a counter boycott. They can say, well, I don't want to use HelloFresh because I think that they are trying to coerce Rumble into deplatforming someone. And I think that's perfectly legitimate as well. But I don't know how you feel about that, like, because you seem to be against the idea of affecting a business by doing a boycott. People could very well boycott ASOS and Burger King and HelloFresh because they think that they are being coercive of another person's speech.
They can, and
but that's the way the cookie crumbles.
They can, and I think they should, because again, it goes back to my original point. Bree, let's say you made a statement on this program, and someone despises or dislikes that particular statement.
Many people are saying it every day.
And they begin to boycott, and they say, you know what, this is outrageous, she's a terrible person. They don't have to watch the show. And they can say, I dislike the statements, I don't like her as a person or me as a person, but that entity, they have every right to permit her or me to stay on this platform as long as we haven't broken the law. And I think people need to make that clear distinction for advertisers so that advertisers can make the better decision of saying, you know what, okay, people don't like it, but we can still continue to have our dollars running on that platform.
In that example,
I think that's a responsibility people should have.
Michael, in that example, if a host of this show or any other show turns off the audience stops watching, the viewership goes down, the financial interest of any organization because of advertisers and the desire to have subscriptions and clicks and things is going to militate toward getting rid of the host that is no longer drawing the audience. And that's a financial decision that companies are allowed to make.
A company can make that decision, but I think distinctions need to be made by people with significant platforms in terms of their feelings about a person versus asking, or I should say sort of alluding to the idea that the person should be removed. Because by not saying anything, one could make the assumption that Megyn Kelly or whomever else don't want Russell Brand on Rumble. They didn't make the distinction that they do want him on Rumble. I think it absolutely is fair.
Like they can't. I think that everyone can express their opinion. I don't think that this response to that the advertisers are going to be vulnerable, going to be sensitive to the interests of the public. That doesn't mean we have to silence the public or read into everything that Megyn Kelly says. A mother is allowed to say that she finds a grown man dating a 16-year-old
I'm not disagreeing with that. I agree with that.
Without being like, oh my God, she has to caveat everything that she says because God forbid it hurts some business somewhere.
I'll give you an example. Anytime I'm on a major platform and we've had conversations about people that have been censored or removed from Twitter at the time, I would voice my opinion and say, yeah, I find the behavior to be atrocious. I don't like the behavior. But I'm not going to go as far as saying that person should be removed because I believe in the freedom of speech.
And that's exactly what Megyn Kelly did.
Most people aren't doing that, Brie.
Well, then be mad at most people, but I don't understand.
And do you not agree that people should have that responsibility to separate their emotional opinions?
Well, a lot of those people do think that Russell Brand should be deplatformed, and I disagree with that. So, like, they're allowed to say that. That is their free speech right as well. They're allowed to say that.
I'm not disagreeing with that being a free speech. I'm simply making the point that distinctions should be made. You can voice your opinion and maintain all the free speech in the world and come short of saying this person should be deplatformed. You can voice your opinion and maintain free speech and say, but until there is concrete evidence, he should be able to maintain his position on that platform. And people have a responsibility, in my opinion, to do that. I would do that. Yeah. And I would hope others would do the same for me.
I think that's a separate issue from...
I don't think so. I don't think you can separate them at all,
Michael,
Brie.
You don't know what I'm separate... I didn't even finish the sentence about what I was going to separate.
Go ahead.
It's a separate issue from what advertisers are contending with, which is just public sentiment. And that is what it is.
And they're contending with that public sentiment for the very reasons I just laid out, because the public feels that there is no obligation to make distinctions in this particular case or any case for that matter.
No, they don't.
And they should.
And you can't, okay, well, it's your job to persuade them of that, sure, Michael, but you can't dictate what the public says or how they
I don't disagree, but I think it
opinion.
should be all of our jobs with a platform to educate the public on separating their personal opinions and making distinctions in terms of freedom of speech.
And I've tried to model that, and I think that Megyn Kelly also tried to model that as well. So let us know what you think about all of this and what you think the role of advertisers versus the government versus social media companies should have when someone behaves badly. Stick around. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.